Welcome to the Pastor Study here on Smooth 88.1 WHOV iHeartRadio right here, y'all, on Facebook Live. Listen, y'all, I'm telling you, the stuff that go on behind the scenes is greater than what happens on the air. Y'all, we got the whole crew in here today. Everybody is with us today. Commonwealth Attorney Anton Bell, we call him Pastor Law. We got Bishop Ray Johnson, Dominion Outreach Worship Center. We got Dr. Albion Lyons, Doctor, because she got two doctors, y'all. We got to give it up for her. We got Delegate Marcia Price representing the 95th. Last but not least, my boy, my partner in crime, Jason Covington, producer extraordinaire. And y'all, we just happy to have everybody here on the show ready to go. Albion, you were the one that came up with the topic for the day. And so we want to just roll with you and see what it is that we want to talk about. I know it's a lot of things that's going on, but we want to have a good conversation today. And I pretty much believe we might disagree on a few things, but that's all right. That's what makes radio fun. So Albion, what you got for us today?
All right, so we're going to roll through a couple, as many of our kind of trending questions, hot topics, conversations we're all having all over the place. And we're like, let's throw it into a show and let's just see what happens, y'all. So we're about to do exactly that. So I'm going to start with the first one, okay? So the first question that came to us is, has social media ruined Black America? That is the first question. Has it ruined Black America? So if y'all were to take a moment to really think about it, like when this thing really became big, how it's being utilized, the generational differences even, because there's a difference between obviously the TikTok generation, the Instagram generation, the Facebook generation, but every one of us has been impacted in some way by the fact that we all have a platform, no matter who you are, where you are, to be able to say, do, represent yourself however you feel like you want to represent yourself, and to what cost, right? So what has that meant for us in particular in terms of our representation in the world as Black people, now that it's unedited? We get to do whatever we want. Shoot, I didn't even mention OnlyFans, but y'all know, there is no limit to what we can do out there. Twitter also, so has that ruined Black America? Do we think that it has? Has it made it better? So if you guys were to make the decision, I need to hear from each of you a yes and no, and I'm going to go to each of you individually. And for your yes or your no, I need you to tell me why you have taken that position. And Ray, I'm going to tell you in advance, you do not get to say both and.
Please,
okay?
Come on. Please. Yes.
It's one or the other, baby, okay?
One or the other.
Always both and.
Or you are not. So I'm going to start first with you, Anton. If you had to say, has social media actually ruined us as a people, or has it been better for us? What would you say and why?
So I say no, and I'll tell you why I say no, because I don't think social media issues are just specific to the Black community. I think that it has hurt the community in large, society in large.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So I say no. But has it done damage to the community? Absolutely it has. But because it's not specific to us, because I see ratchetness in everybody's community. And the stuff that they're doing is all over the place. If anything, what I hate is that sometimes we tend to imitate what we see in other communities. And if white America gets a cold, we get pneumonia.
Right. Got you. Okay. Thea, if you were to say, has it hurt us? Has it ruined us? Are we better for it? If you were to pick a side, what's your side and why?
I'm gonna say better for it.
Okay.
And I'm gonna say, because while I agree with my brother Anton that there are some negative aspects, I think the good has outweighed the bad. And I'll give you an example. Summer of 2020, I do not think we would have gotten to an international movement for Black lives if it had not been for social media. I think I would want more people to fact check before they share information, especially since it's been proven that the Russians were targeting Black social media users between the ages of 45 and 65 to spread misinformation. But I'm gonna go with, on the whole, I think it's made us better.
Okay, fair enough. Ray, if you were to say, did it ruin us or has it made us better? One side or the other, what would you say?
Do I have to do one side or the other?
Only one or the other. We'll come back around to talk about some of the nuances, but for this part of the question, one or the other.
I said that just for Anton, just so I can see his response on radio today. I would say I don't think it's made us better because, and my qualification for that is, like when you have the family reunion and there are some people that are part of the family that are distant cousins that might perhaps, if I could go back a few weeks ago, that would be orange, that come to the forefront. And you're like, who in the world let them out? Social media lets everybody out. And I don't think that we're in a place, despite some of the games that we've had in terms of the election of the first African-American president, the first African-American vice president, female, then you have Ketanji Brown Jackson, and all of the strides and gains that we have made, we still live in a tier class, social class, economic class kind of a country. And we are still in the place where we've got to put our best foot forward, and social media sometimes does not allow us to do that because Rollo, Tay-Tay, and Day-Day, they make their way to the forefront sometimes. And we all got some Rollos and some Tay-Tays and some Day. We all do. It just is what it is.
I don't know about Rollo, but okay. Okay, Jason, it's on you. Better or worse for it?
I think we are worse for it because, as Ray said, it opened up to everybody. So, like Anton said, you do have good social media interactions with African Americans, but then you also have OnlyFans, Shade Room, countless other things that, what is it called, World Star, that are magnified. This is not the majority of what Black America is about, but it's just like the things that are negative are always magnified. You rarely hear anything positive. On the news, we always hear negative stuff, shootings and killings and robberies. What about that person that you in a grocery store and you pay for their groceries? Like, are we taking pictures of that? Are we taking pictures of Black men riding their bikes with their Black sons? No, we're not doing that. We're taking pictures of two Black men fighting. But yes, we are here, but it's not mainstream. It's not magnified, and it's not glorified as it should. Just in my opinion, and I come in peace in 2022. I come in peace.
Fair enough, Jason. Kevin, better or worse for it?
Worse.
Okay.
And well, let me first of all say that I think social media all social media does is it reveals what's really in the hearts of people, right? And so that's what we're seeing. A lot of social media, you got people who have fake accounts. And so in these fake accounts, they really feel like they can say and do whatever they want. And so now you're really seeing the real heart and intent of people. And so a lot of it is in my opinion, while there is Sia and Ton, you're right, there's a lot of good that can come out of social media. I think that for me, the negative aspects far outweigh the good in terms of our community. Just recently, our church did a 40-day consecration during the Lenten season, and I got off of social media completely. And to be honest with you, now that the consecration is over, I don't even know if I want to go back.
Go back. Yeah.
To be honest with you, I don't miss it. Like I thought I was going to. I don't miss it at all. And I just think that when you look at social media, even Bishop, a lot of times, even as the church is looked at, it's usually looked at from a negative perspective, right? Most of the things that are shown, as Jason showed, when it comes even like to the church and ministry, are not the things that are going on well. It's usually the craziness that happens in a particular situation. And so I think in all of our professions, we can say that, right? Like, see, even for you, like a lot of things on social media when it comes to politics aren't the positive things that you're doing in your community. A lot of it's the negative stuff too that most people tend to gravitate toward, right? Ton, in your profession, you know, for law, for example, most people tend to gravitate toward the shady people in law enforcement, or the things that are going wrong, as opposed to the things that are going right. And I just think that's human nature for a lot of people. You know, people tend to go to the negative. And so for me, I would say worse.
Mm-hmm. So would we, you know, and I'm going to throw this out to you all, and any one of you can kind of answer that. So would you all say that is the problem really the social media, or did social media just reveal what was already the issues that existed inside of our community? And if so, speak to that. So anybody can jump in where that's concerned. I see you nodding your head real strong, Anton. So, you know, by all means, you jump in first.
You know, the Bible says, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks.
Mouth speaks. Mm-hmm.
And so social media is just a mouthpiece. It gives you an opportunity to speak what's in your heart. And the part that bothers me the most, I think Swan hits on it to a certain degree. It has birthed a generation of cowards. It has birthed a generation of individuals who can sit behind a screen in their home or wherever they may be and say the most vile things about individuals, even though you may have different points of views, because there's nothing wrong with having different points of views. But when you attack people intimately and personally because they disagree with your viewpoint, I think at that point it is a bully platform for so many. And when I am just looking at some of the threads on social media, I just see so many when people disagree, I just see an instinct to attack those individuals personally. And that's not social media. That's what's in their heart. And that's why we see that same mindset or that same activity play itself out in the streets. Because remove social media, remove the computers and the IT and all that, and they'll put them in the same place, the same environment, and someone disagree with you. And now what was in their heart to attack them personally has now become violence. And you see that play out. You looked at me wrong. You said the wrong thing to me. You disrespected me. You stepped on my shoe. You said something about my boy. You said something about my people. And now they're killing each other. And that is something that social media does not create. It just is an avenue. It's a platform for them to be able to showcase what's already in their heart.
Understood.
Yeah, Alvin, can I add to that real quick?
Sure, go ahead.
And 100% what Ton just said. And the one thing that we're not mentioning, and why I say it is worse, is because none of us has mentioned the damaging effects that social media has had on our kids, right? You know, the need to have likes, the need to have your business put out there, and the traumatic experiences of what happens. A lot of stuff that's happening in our schools is because of stuff that's been put out on social media. And our kids aren't old enough, strong enough, have enough self-esteem to be able to handle all of that. And so you're starting to see some of the reactions. I would also add here, pornography is a huge issue that nobody talks about, right? Especially when it comes to our kids. And so now our kids are exposed at a much younger age to things that, quite frankly, we did not see at all to the level that they're seeing when we were their age, right? And so think about that. Think about the sexual imagery that our kids have access to at a click of a button. Whereas in our generation, there was magazines and you had to go to a movie, whatever it was. It's so prevalent through social media.
And so accessible.
It is. And so how do our kids navigate that space? You see that playing out in our schools, kids having sex younger. And a lot of the pornography online is violent toward women. So now imagine that they're seeing this. They ain't getting sex education in school. They're getting it from online and social media. They think that this is normal behavior. And a lot of the pornography online is sexually violent. So if they're looking at that thinking that this is what's supposed to be appropriate behavior, then now when they're engaging in sexual activity, they're actually doing violent things. So I do want to ask Sia a question here, if I can, relative to this. From a political place, Sia, and from a governmental perspective, has Virginia ever looked at like laws governing adult content, right? Having greater access or certain access, or just at least making sure that it's harder for kids to see that kind of content. Has that ever been anything like that in Virginia legislation?
So it's more of a federal issue, but I do, before I get into the laws, I do want to just address, I don't know that that the use of social media has birthed a new generation of cowards. Most of the people that are cowards towards me are older men. So like the kids, we actually can connect and share resources. Like when I talk to some students at Woodside, like we're in the DMs and I'm sharing links to get scholarships. And there's just a reach that positivity also has that was more cornered. And so, yes, we can list all of the bad things, but we haven't talked about, absolutely, there are full pages that are dedicated to sharing positive images of Black men and their children. There are positive pages that encourage people to be authentically themselves in their sexual orientation and gender identity. Like there's a lot of positivity out there, but even us, we didn't mention all of that. So we have to check our own human nature about gravitating to the negative. And I'm not saying there's not negative out there. I'm just saying from my experience and what I have been able to do with my platform and have watched other people, when you use your platform for good, it really does spread. The amount of information for the rent relief program and the millions of dollars that we got out would have never happened in the Black community if it had not been for social media. And I could go on and on. So it's like, yes, we can name the bad, but if I believe that if we also took time to name the good, the connections we've made, the help that we've been able to do, there is a lot of good on social media. Where I would also push back on the kids and their self-esteem, I do believe it was on this here platform that I've heard you good gentlemen talk about the role of the parent. Well, if you're not getting good self-esteem from your own home, you're going to go look for it somewhere else. And so I think instead of just the kids out here wilding, we might want to look at some of the dynamics. What are they lacking and what have the adults in their lives not offered so that they turn to social media for some of these things? And it's just like when we talked about gang activity, all of that. So I do think that there's some self-assessment that adults need to have if we're going to talk about how kids inappropriately use it. But as it pertains to laws, social media is largely handled on the federal level. And I know that they have been looking at, just in general since the pandemic, youth mental health. And again, a lot of the conversation is around if you are isolated within your own home pre or post-pandemic, and you are not getting love, support, and all of the things that science has proven human beings need, you're going to go look for it elsewhere. And what happens is, and I was on a panel that was talking about girls specifically, so not saying just girls, but what happens is the girls start to look for the love that they're not getting from their parents, the approval that they're not getting from, whatever they feel like they're lacking, and start basing their self-esteem on the likes, on the images. But also, one of the wonderful new trends on TikTok is this audio where you're like all made up and but girl, that's not me. And then they show them faces without it. They show that they're proud about what their skin looks like. And so there are positive trends that are out there. And so I would say that I really hope that people are supporting the positive things too.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Tom.
Okay. So I hear what you're saying, Marcia, but I've seen too many examples of kids growing up in good parent homes where the parents are active, the parents are loving on these kids, but they're not their only influence because they have to go to school. They're going to be in the neighborhoods. and bullies get into place. And because they're different for whatever reason, those children deal with self-esteem issues because of the interactions that they have to deal with in school. And some of that plays out on the social media. I could speak specifically to some situations where parents literally shut down their social media of their children because they said, I see how this is impacting your behavior and how it's impacting your esteem. We can love on you all day long, but if you get up here and because you're slightly overweight, or because you look a little different or whatever, or you're not in the cool group, then you're treated a certain way. And I see the impact it's having on your attitude, on your grades and so forth, or how your body image and all of that. And so I've just seen too many instances where there have been, and I'm not saying there are not positive things going on social media, of course there are, but I've seen so much negativity far outweigh the good, because unfortunately we live in a society who gravitate towards the negativity versus the positive. That's why you could turn on the news and the headline for every channel is not going to be anything positive. I don't care what city you in, what news you look at, but here's the thing. They're only doing that based on ratings. So if the ratings were high for the positivity, they would
put out
more
more
positivity. All the positive up
Yeah.
there. But the fact that they put in 10 minutes of negativity and then they're gonna put on the weather. And so it's crazy. And so it's like people are gravitating towards that and they want to see that and they want to criticize those things. And so the social media piece, I'm sorry, I've seen far too much negativity. And unfortunately, because in my line of work, that's all I see. Is because when it gets bad, that's when people come to me. People don't come to me because life is good.
Something good happened, right?
Something bad has happened to them. And I just see the negativity of it.
I just want to ask, is it social media or did I get bullied before social media even existed? Like, so I can rock with the fact that we're saying that it exposes human nature and that it exposes what's in the hearts of people. But like, yeah, there was like bullying didn't start with social media. Some of these like really bad things didn't start with social media. All I'm saying is everything is amplified on social media. And I really do believe that there's more good in the world than bad. And I choose not to only gravitate toward the bad. I have sought out the good. There's hundreds of thousands of likes on a lot of the good stuff. You know what I'm saying? So it's not just like if you could pick out the shade room, I could pick out Zen Education Project. They're getting the same amount of likes, but it's just, I just want to make sure that before we just make that statement, that everybody on this platform has actually tried to look for the good that's out there. But if you only following the bad, you only going to see it.
Marcy, can you say that again? Because I've never heard of that.
Well, and that's actually
the
point that I wanted to make, is that I think that one of the things that even this illuminates is the fact that you have to be so intentional about seeking out good in these spaces, because the algorithms allow for the bad to be repetitively shared over and over again. And so, and to the kid component, it is 100% true that bullying existed, emotional abuse, trauma existed long before social media. But what social media added to it is that instead of having one kid picking on you at your school, now when your picture is up on social media and you're just hoping that you'll find some friends out there, now you got kids all over the world being like, you ugly, you fat, you should kill yourself, you this, that, and the other, all kinds of crazy stuff that kids are not prepared to be able to process, the idea that these people you've never even seen before, who probably are uglier than they're making you feel, but hurt people hurt other people. And so you're creating this space where so many people can do so much so fast that when it's negative, it could be a tsunami of negative. Now, I agree with you, Sia, that when it's positive, it has the opportunity to be extraordinarily positive. There's some good stories that would have gotten no shine if it was not for social media, making sure that thing happened and expanding that space, because mainstream media would have never given it its platform, but social media created the platform for the positivity. And a lot of the Black Girl Magic, and the list goes on, was a byproduct of us actually being able to command the space ourselves. So I'm not suggesting at all that there aren't upsides. It's just that as a community of color, unfortunately, we've put a lot of emphasis on the wrong kinds of things, you know, like, and
But is that social media's fault,
no,
or is it
and
how
I'm not,
we're using it?
and I would say that just it would be similar to the conversation around a gun. Is it the gun's fault, or is it how people use the gun? And the question, and that becomes an argument all the time, right? When we're talking about legislation around gun control, the argument is constantly, it's the heart of man that is utilizing this gun the way that it's utilizing the gun, right? It's the
But you know,
criminality behind it that is the problem.
what
And
we also have passed is safety mechanisms where the parents are responsible for keeping firearms away from children, or if they're teaching them how to hunt, they teach them how to do it safely. So that, again, I just feel like on some other aspects, we've been able to talk about and see how involved a parent should be in a child's life. But then it just seems like that component is missing from some of this conversation, where it's like, okay, so if I'm going to be intentional about seeking the things, like say I have a child, I'm going to be intentional about seeking the things that, why does your child have their own phone and unfettered use and access to the internet when you wouldn't do that for a gun, you wouldn't do that for TV? So I'm just reminding us that there's responsibility that adults have with any tool that is available, because obviously tools can be used for bad. And that's why we go with gun safety, gun access, and we're also trying to shift the culture that leads to gun violence. So I think it does apply to this.
so let me
But
come
see,
to
this
you
is-
on
but
that
this
for
is-
just a quick second. Hold on one second, Kevin, because one of the things that is also, and I hear you, I hear everything that you're saying, sis. The thing that's challenging for a parent is that when you restrict to the level that they don't have access to these things, and then they go to school and all of their friends but them have access to all of these things, and then they feel like you are over controlling their life and you don't trust me, which becomes a whole conversation at home with parents. Like, you know, if kids are saying to you, like, mom and dad, if you believe that you raised me well, then you should be able to trust me with some of these things. I wouldn't violate. And you think that, you know, I want to be able to give you trust. I want to show you that I trust you. So I give you a little space, but unfortunately, when I open that up, I can't control what comes through that gate, right? Like, I can't control what comes through that window. And sometimes stuff comes in that window that I never wanted in your house, right? Like, but you can't unsee it. You can't unfeel it. You can't unexperience it. So there is that component. Then the other thing that's true is no matter how much parents tell their kids, I love you, I love you, I love you, you're beautiful, you're beautiful, you're beautiful, kids always look for affirmation from their peers of that. How many girls their daddy's been telling their whole life they're beautiful, but it doesn't matter how many times my daddy tells me I'm beautiful. I want that one dude to look at me like the guy on the movie, the guy on the show, the guy in the radio, the guy on the song that is telling this woman that she is so beautiful. I need somebody who I could be romantically involved with that makes me feel like I'm something. And the fact that no man is telling me I'm something besides my daddy, that's cute, but I'm over it. My daddy's with my mommy. They sleep together every night. They have each other. I have no one. So my daddy's affirmation isn't enough. I go through that with my son. Like, it doesn't matter. And I adore my son. You know, Sia, sometimes I'm a little bit helicopter with him. You know, I love my baby, but it does not change the fact that I can't compete with the cookies out there. I cannot compete with that. No matter how much I love him, I can't offer him what these little girls are prepared to offer him. And he wants to be, you know, bound with someone who he can experience romantic affirmation with. And mommy can't help you with that. And so it doesn't matter that I tell him he walks on water. He still wants these little girls to make sure that he feels like a real man. And so, like, it's hard for a parent, Sia, mommies, daddies, daughters, you know, sons, and non-binary. It is hard for a parent out here in these streets to try to compete with the fundamental need for peer affirmation. that is just different than parental affirmation, because kids will say to you, you have to love me because you're my parent, and so basically your love, and that's a given. I'm looking for some other kind of love, and that's the thing we struggle with. Go ahead, Kevin.
Yes,
I
I
still
think
experienced that before social media. It's not changing the nature of it though.
I agree.
And I'll say I don't think that I have to have kids to understand what I see and what I also experienced. So I get that parents have a very unique perspective on how it is, but like a lot of the kids that are being neglected emotionally at home with or without social media end up coming to talk to those of us that don't have kids. So again, this sounds like you're describing human nature before they even learned what social media was. So I still don't understand how it's social media's fault that sometimes bad things get amplified. And it just seems like everything is amplified, not just the bad.
Let's go back to the original question. See, the original question was from Alvin, has social media helped or hurt the Black community as a whole? From that question, I said worse, and others said worse. It does not mean, however, we're neglecting the good. It doesn't mean that social media hasn't been used in positive ways to impact change. But overall, it has been a detriment. Now, if anybody's watched The Social Experiment on Netflix, how social media originated, right? It was originated to make money. It was originated to get into the minds of people about what they're watching on social media. And then all of a sudden, all these images, that's why now, if you go on Facebook or social media, what you just watched, what you just looked up on the website now is in your feed, right? Because you got to watch that social experiment on Social Dilemma on Netflix.
Yep.
So there are algorithms that are watching us. There are things that are studying our patterns, right? And then putting in front of us the things that we know we like and are gravitated toward. I raise the issue of kids because kids aren't strong enough to handle all of this stuff, in my opinion, right? My son's 18 years old, see it. My son came to me last year like, Dad, I got to get off social media. He said it. He said, because number one, the people who up there aren't even acting like they act when in person, right? That he felt like they're trying to present themselves in a way that's not real. And by the way, see, that ain't kids. Adults do that on social media.
All the time.
Most of the dating apps are people presenting themselves in a fake way, right? So no, social media did not create that. But what social media has done is make it more accessible and widespread for me to sell a version of myself that ain't true. And this is the issue of kids and really now the generations behind our generation, is that now it's difficult to sit down and have a one-on-one conversation. Now it's difficult because you got kids in a room that don't know how to talk to each other because they're used to sitting in front of a screen, right? And no, social media is not to blame for that, but this is some of the unintended consequences that have come out as a result of overuse of social media. You got fake facades, you got people that don't know how to connect, you got less opportunities of people knowing how to solve conflict, you have less interpersonal skills. All of that is an unintended consequence of social media. And for the Black community, we can't have that when we're already behind in other categories to begin with. So that's why I say it's been worse.
So when I heard the original question, and sometimes I hone in on original words, when I heard the original question, I thought it was, has social media ruined the Black community? First, I reject
it. Really was, yes.
I reject the premise.
We started to,
okay, so for the original question, Reverend, I reject the premise that the Black community has been ruined. So that's where I started, okay? Then I go to, and this is how I think, and I know sometimes I'm on a different wavelength, but then I go to the fact that everything that we have talked about we can talk about the root causes for why social media may have exacerbated something, but it did not cause it. The fact that we are breaking down in communication, we can look at some of the social systems that we go to, i.e. the church, and see where the way that we do church has hurt our communication as well, especially when we talk about children feeling elevated, empowered, and whole and human beings. So that's how I heard the question. I hear what you all are saying, but I think I might have processed the question a little bit differently than just, is it good or bad? And so I just want to clarify that.
Okay, so let me go ahead, Kevin.
But you said it was better.
I do.
You answered Alvia's question and said you felt it was better.
Right, because the juxtaposition between its presence and its absence, the juxtaposition between being ruined or made better, I still stand by that for the way that I understood the original question.
Mm-hmm.
And I respectfully disagree because
with that, we have often disagreed.
We're allowed to do exactly that. Right. So let me ask this question. If I were to say, because if we're not an absolute, it either ruined or it made us better. We didn't say that as an absolute because of the nuances of the things that we brought into this conversation. If I gave you a scale in terms of, you've got 100% and you can move that scale to say that I think that, it's been 10% good, 90% bad. It's been 70% good, 30% bad. If I were to say that to y'all, what would you say? And just give me a number. I don't want you to give me any qualifier. Just give me a number. What would you say in terms of percent good, percent bad? You could say 100-0. It's been all bad. What would you say that is, given, what it is that we're talking about? That yes, there are some components that have been good, but relative to how much has been bad, for those of us who think it's been more negative than positive, what would you say it is? So,
right,
Jason,
just a number.
I'm gonna come to you first, Jason. Just a number. All I want is a number. What percent good, what percent bad do you think social media has been inside of the Black community?
Let me role model this for my brother, Bishop Johnson. 60% good, 40% bad.
Okay. So then that would make your answer. Social media has been more good than bad relative to the Black community, is what your answer would mean based on the numbers you chose. Nod yes, you're good with that answer. Okay. Ton, what would you say in percentages? You gotta unmute, Ton.
30% good, 70% bad.
Okay. Sia, what would you say in terms of good and bad? What would you say?
Especially for the progress that we've made as a whole in the arena I'm in, I'm gonna agree with the 60-40, 60 good, 40 bad.
Okay, fair enough. Ray, what would you say?
20 bad, 80 good.
Okay, so it's very
I did that just for Jason, just for radio. Absolutely not. 80% bad, 20% good.
Okay, we're gonna do that 180.
That was not your original. Okay.
I'm 80% bad, 20%.
20% good? Okay, fair enough. Kevin, what would you say?
I'm in the 30 to 40 range good, 60 to 70 range bad.
And I'm with y'all. I would say 70 bad, 30 good. When it is used right, it has incredible positive power. The problem is we got more people misusing it than we have people using it properly. And the number of likes that are underneath these stories tell you how much play the negativity is getting instead of the positivity. So it's not that it's not there. C is 100% right. It's there. But our appetite is for the junk food. And as a result, we are passing up the vegetables on Instagram and we are 100% reaching for the hot donut sign, right? And the consequence of that is what it is that we're ultimately spreading. So then I want to ask you guys this question. Is free speech really a good thing? Is it really a good thing? Or would we prefer some measure? I know this sounds crazy, but given what we're seeing, what happens with the ability to say whatever, wherever, do some of y'all feel like we would be better off if there was some measure of censorship because I know it's a bad word, but censorship relative to what is able to be put out there. And I'm purposely asking that question that way. Is free speech really a totally good thing? Ton, I'm gonna come to you first.
So you're gonna make me have to put on my attorney hat for this question. So let me explain this to you. Constitutionally, the First Amendment gives us the right to free speech.
Absolutely.
However, the Supreme Court has put some restrictions on or some limitations on what is considered free speech, or the ability of a person to say without some type of negative ramification or consequence. So for instance, you cannot run into a crowded theater and say fire.
Fire, right?
And not have a consequence to that. You cannot say words to another individual that has the likelihood to create some type of negative consequence, such as you can't curse someone out in public and say words to them that has to the average person the ability or the incitement for violence. Those things have been also put into code or some type of statute, like curse and abuse or disorderly conduct, things of that nature. So there are some parameters around what you can say to a person or in a environment that the First Amendment does not protect you to say. The First Amendment does not protect you lying on another person. That is defamation. And so that is not free speech. So free speech, I think, is good because you should be able to communicate ideas, beliefs, and so forth. And I think in a manner that is cordial, or in a manner that is professional, or in a manner that is kind, for lack of a better word. However, I do believe that when speech creates, encourages, bring about violence, bring about destruction, brings about tearing down of others, I think there should be some limitations on that.
Good stuff. Good stuff. See you.
Yeah, I appreciate my brother's breakdown for the constitutional and legal. The human part is just like, yeah, some people should have to shut up, right? Because I disagree with them. But when you understand that legal, the reason behind some of these laws, I understand that power differential, because I might be in power one day to be able to determine what can and can't be said and the rules that go around it. But I might lose that power one day and somebody else gets to tell me what can and can't. So in Virginia, now we're shutting down textbooks that have pictures of a protest, even though it's a part of history that happened. That is terrible. And so when you have this free speech, especially as it pertains to us being able to talk about actual truth, being able to share information about what we are doing to damage our world and our environment, I think it cuts both ways. And so I want to be able to say whatever I need and know that truth is truth and navigate freely. So I think that everybody should have that right.
I got you. Kevin.
Yeah, I agree with Ton and Sia, because the challenge becomes, who is the one that's going to make the laws to censor, right? And we know that in this day and time, usually whoever's making the laws has a political spin behind it, right? Like you look at, for example, Sia, what you just said, look at Florida, for example. DeSantis just cut out all the textbooks in Florida except for one company. And the one company that he's allowing to have textbooks in Florida is Youngkin's company. So you do the math there, right? And you can clearly see that certain history is going to be censored because now only one person is going to be able to tell that story, or one company. So yes, I think that is damaging. Now, to Ton's point, not, saying stuff that's going to injure, that's going to incite, that's going to be defaming of others. Certainly you don't want that. but I don't want you silencing me from speaking my truth and telling the truth either.
Good stuff. Ray.
Twan, here's the gag real quick. The example I gave is Virginia.
Like,
It's
No.
in our state now.
Yeah, and here's the thing about it is I don't have a problem with someone trying to share their truth. Just make sure it is true. Because if you say something that is not true, especially to a third party, and it's published, then you're going to be a Johnny Depp, Amber Heard situation up in Northern Virginia, and you're going to be dealing with defamation.
Representative McCarthy.
But what we have in this generation is truth is relative, and that's a whole nother show.
we are a
That's whole nother
post-truth
show,
society, okay, y'all?
right?
We
Yeah,
are big
truth-
feelings, small facts.
Yeah,
around
truth is
here.
never centralized. So
Mhm.
when you say truth, everybody's going to feel like they're speaking what is their truth, and that's why I'm saying when somebody else decides to censor, then somebody else is saying, okay, that's true and that's not true. And that's what Marcia is pointing out in Virginia and what we're seeing in Florida. To me, that's more dangerous.
Ray, what would you have said?
I completely 100% agree with what everyone has already said, particularly as it relates to the church, because a part of our work, if you remove our title preachers away from us, we become content creators. And as content creators, to communicate what we believe truth to be in terms of the infallibility of scripture, when we begin to communicate that, what body or who's going to determine what's infallible as it relates to that? And we're already there. And so for us who adhere to some of the literal tradition, we get into trouble when we just read certain texts of scripture. And so that can get us into a whole world of trouble, because not only do I believe that we're postmodern in regards to truth, but Pastor Swan, I believe that we're borderline, if not at least 1 foot in the water of post-Christian today, because people may not, in terms of the larger society, understand what that means to be Christian in a world of pluralism. So it's murky waters.
I'm sorry, Ray. Good stuff.
Go ahead.
Jason.
I'm a little befuddled because of the agonisticness of the question. Because on one hand, on the other side, from my perspective, I do want people to be censored, but I have an issue when other people become in power. Now they tell me what I can't say, what I can't do. So you can't have your cake. Well, I can have my cake and eat it too, because I lift weights a little bit. But you have to be careful when we talk about censorship, because, and a lot of times we talk about political censorship. We're not even really talking about what should the right things to say. Not saying things that's ugly or misrepresenting a nationality or a creed of people or religion or something like that. We're mostly talking about people's views. So I don't know. I think I'm like Pastor Johnson. I'm not saying both ends.
You were both in today?
No, I'm conversely.
You both in today?
For me, I'm on the side of I don't know. It's undecided.
I got you. So let me ask you guys.
Alvin, before you go, see, this is where the social media and Sia, this is, your point about social media not being the issue, but here's where social media becomes a megaphone or a microphone to everybody's thoughts, right? So I think most of us agree that censorship may be a little dicey, right? Because who's going to tell me not to speak? But then when I have a voice and an opportunity, pre-social media, I only talk to my friends about that in my immediate circle. Now with social media, I can talk to the world about my crazy thoughts. And so that's why I believe you see now our political, it, we're so politically divided. Our country is so divided because now you do have a much larger platform to share your views, however extreme they are. And then other people can join in. The QAnon, that foolishness, only spread because of social media. But you have groups like that in sects and people all throughout history that have always thought stuff that has been divergent but you've never had what we have now, where you have such an opportunity to blast what you think to more people across the world that can support your views.
Which is one of the fears that they had around terrorism, right? Like that you're able to recruit these extremist, positions and perspectives, because now you have access to folks that you would not have easily had access to. So because we just have a few minutes left, but let me ask y'all this. So if you could edit one thing out of, and this will be a modern version or a creative version of censorship out of a community, okay? That there's one thing that I could take off of social media, it will just not be allowed, period. And we're talking about relative to the Black community. There is one thing that I would take off of all social media that pertain to us, that I think would make us better or create a better environment for us growing and progressing as a community. What thing would you censor out of social media, which means that it cannot ever be put on, you cannot see it, you cannot view it? What thing would you take off of social media that you think would make a difference, a positive impact in communities of color? If you could not see or access this kind of imagery, thoughts, ideas, whatever that might be, what would you erase if you could only take one thing out? You can censor one thing off. What would it be? Ray, I'm gonna come to you first.
And she said quick.
I'm not even going to dignify that with another response.
I'm just saying.
I would say quickly, Pastor Law, I would say the content where the kids in school have their camera phones out and the violence that takes place among young people, I would remove that, because that creates a much more of a frenzy in terms of a response. And I'm thinking about a neighborhood event that would happen in downtown Newport News, and we just didn't need to see all of that. And so if we could remove some of the violence that takes place in community and schools, I would feel better about that.
Okay, so you would edit violence off of social media like that, where the Black community is concerned.
Yeah.
Got you. Kevin, what would you edit off?
The inappropriate sexual content for young people. And what I mean by this, and Ton, you can comment, the nudes that are being sent, particularly for minors. I'm not talking about adults, because adults, but I don't think kids, and Ton, can you comment? I know we got a couple of minutes. I don't think people understand that it's criminal to text and send nudes of minors.
Right.
It's child pornography.
It sure is.
But because it's so prevalent, most people don't even realize that. Right? How Utah could literally go into any high school and probably arrest hundreds of kids because they have passed sexual content of a minor.
I've gone into assembly where there's been like 200, 300 students, and I said, right now, if you got some naked image of a person under the age of 18, I'm gonna give you 5 seconds to delete it off your computer right now.
Remember that.
And you should have seen the look on their face. The look.
Because he's like, I could put you in jail right this second for that. Yep. Folks were shocked, absolutely shocked. Sia, what would you remove in content?
Internalized notions of white supremacy and respectability politics.
Interesting. She always gotta be deep, y'all. It's never gonna be superficial.
Well, that's a whole nother show, Sia, because what does that even look like? What does that even look like, right? Like
all by itself.
It looks like our conversation around the orange, brown, and chocolate, but we'll get back to that.
Ready for it. Okay.
Well then.
Jason, what would you remove?
Self-hatred and hatred, kind of same thing for me.
I got you. Ton?
Violence. Anything involving violence, anything involving fights, anything involving guns, violence.
That would be me too. My first movement would be violence. And to be quite honest, if I could censor virtually anything, I would censor violence out of all of the music too. You would not be able to listen to music.
Right. Everything.
Does that include
everywhere.
violence against us that helped us get convictions
Period.
against certain law
Against-
enforcement?
Period.
Violence is
Period.
violence.
Yeah, I would take all violence out of music.
All
So
violence.
what would have the summer of 2020 look like without the video of those that were killed?
No.
No.
That's not what I mean.
That's
I'm
evidence.
talking about the glorification of violence
Yes, there we
in
go.
music.
I just wanted the clarification because to me that is violence. Like
You know,
murder
that
is violence.
that is a case. That's actual
That's
evidence. of fact.
evidence. That's
That's
evidence.
different. That's
Okay.
not what I mean. I
No.
mean the glorification of gunplay and
Absolutely.
Got it.
I'll light your whole house up. I can
There
fight
you go.
and shoot.
Okay.
I this, that,
Yes.
and the other. I mean
Okay.
I mean violence culture that has
Right.
been made that has raised to the level of celebrity. I would
Mhm.
take all of that. If I could edit anything from music, I would pull violence straight out of music. Like
Okay.
you cannot
I'm
make
talking-
music where we're making this cute that you done shot up and you're only talking about Black people shooting other Black people. You're not talking about anything else
No.
but what's happening in our community and how you don't care whose family is all wiped out because they crossed you. Like that kind of violence would not be allowed in music, period. If I could censor anything, that would be the first thing I would scoop straight out because I think that I know it's not the show today, but if we were to talk about anything, will that any one thing we could change in our Black community for this next generation, violence would be out of the question. You cannot make another song that has violence glorified inside of it. If you're telling a historical story, that's a different conversation. That's fact. You were
I was
talking
about to say because there's a lot of violence in this country and this history. I got you.
Emmett Till, he was talking about the loss of somebody's life and,
Right.
and you know,
I'm with
justice
you.
different.
Got it.
Now,
But if
we're
you're
talking
glorifying
about the
it-
type of violence where you have the 12-year-old, 13-year-old who shoot her cousin in the head and then falls to the ground and shoot herself on the head. And they're showing this over and over and over again on social media. That shouldn't be seen at all.
Got it.
Like violence would be gone from social media and it would not be able to be glorified in our music. And even that, much like the algorithms, that is intentional that music gets played at the level that it's being played, and we are being played by it as a community of color. We think that it's because this is the best music. No, it is intentional that folks are making sure that they're funding that kind of music as opposed to some of this incredible, beautiful music that's being created out there that is elevating us as a community and speaking to our power. That's not the stuff that's getting the funding and the airplay. The stuff that is destroying us is what's getting the funding and the airplay. And that's not an accident. So that would definitely be my thing. So listen, y'all, we did it. Time is up. I mean, we could talk forever about all the kinds of things that if we could just wave a wand, we can change inside of our community. But really at the end of the day, y'all, the reality is, what are we doing? As Sia was talking about personal responsibility, what are we doing in our own spaces to elevate our own families and the people that we love so that we can be better as a collective inside of this human experience that we're having in America? All right, Kevin, wrap us up.
Yeah, we got to run. Great job, Alvin, today leading the show. We're out. Hope you dropped your comments in the Facebook page, The Pastor's Study. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, be blessed and be a blessing to someone else. This is Smooth 88.1 WHOV, iHeartRadio, right here, y'all. Facebook Live.